And to get some more on this, of what's happening in Turkey and what's next, I'm joined by CGTN's Global Economics Analyst, Saruhan Hatipoglu. Saruhan, thanks very much for coming in. We heard there, inevitably, in a referendum like this, lots of opposition, lots of dissent about this referendum. We have to, for the moment, take this as a democratically binding referendum in Turkey. Why is it causing so much consternation? Why are people so opposed to it?
Well, the no supporters, Owen, look at it as secularism versus Islamic or Sharia type of governance system in Turkey, even though that is not the case, really. But also giving you some backdrop on this. As you know, Turkey was in a state of emergency. And the government used absolutely every possible mean to campaign for the yes vote, whereas the no supporters have been curtailed. The requests that they had to hold meetings were not allowed. And on top of everything else, President Erdogan, who's constitutionally barred, by the way, not to campaign on this with the current constitution, was campaigning on this. So despite all that...
He ran into a lot of trouble with his ministers going to places like the Netherlands to effectively lobby for
the
this
crisis with Europe, stoking nationalist sentiments in Turkey, despite that 49%, pretty much 48-point change, said no to this. And that tells me, and pretty much everybody else, that the country is bitterly, vehemently divided.
From an investment point of view, we've seen reasonable amounts of foreign investment continuing to go into Turkey, certainly during 2016. How do investors now look at this country with a president that's assuming more and more power? Does it matter to them ultimately?
It does. And I think we should distinguish between short-term equity investment versus foreign direct investment in Turkey. For an equity investor perspective, this is beautiful because this government has been there for over 15 years now. The president is going to be there for another 10 years.
So there's some stability.
Absolutely. So, but short-term investors come in, make their money, and get out. Turkey has a huge current account deficit. It needs to finance it somehow, and definitely portfolio investors, not one of them. Your typical short-term investor coming from overseas doesn't care about that. Turkey needs to shoot for foreign direct investment. That's the long-term investors coming into Turkey, buying companies or creating other companies in there. But in the medium to long term, with the constitutional amendments that are passed, there is significant concern that institutions are weakening. And when institutions start to weaken, foreign direct investment starts drying up. So that is a big problem in the medium to long term for Turkey and investment prospects.
Just briefly, Saruhan, what does this do for its EU accession? I noted President Owern saying, does it really matter if this really puts a nail in the coffin of the accession agreements? He seems very ambivalent after this referendum result.
I think it was over before, Owen, when the European Parliament, non-binding as is, they voted, again, by a significant margin to stop negotiations with Turkey over these measures that the state of emergency brought to Turkey. So this doesn't help at all. Even today, when President Erdogan was addressing the public, he mentioned again the death penalty. He didn't need to do that. He said, well, you know, you spoke for us, and now we're going to go after the death penalty. So there's going to be a referendum on that. The moment that passes is the moment officially EU accession negotiations are going to
because they won't accept a candidate country that has the death penalty.
Yeah.
But does it mean, when I talk to people in Turkey, Turkish experts, I ask them all the time, does it mean that Turkey's looking the other way to Russia, to the east? And the answer I get is it's more complicated than that. They seem to think that they can juggle both the EU and countries further east together.
Well, yeah, the EU part I'm not so sure about. I would respectfully disagree with them. But look, the relations with the U.S. are not that bad. President Trump today, I believe, called President Erdogan to congratulate him on this election when the entire country is divided about it. So, and the reason that that's being done is because the U.S. needs an ally other than Russia.
In NATO.
In NATO, as well as in Syria, with the things taking place. Look, President Erdogan was given a poison chalice. They're celebrating right now, but there's a lot of risk here with a divided country for the things that they want to do. And if they don't embrace the other side, they don't try to make other sides see some of the things that they're trying to do, this divisiveness is going to continue.
Just briefly, Saruhan, this referendum effectively could give President Erdogan, he could remain in office until maybe 2029 or something like that. Realistically, could you see that now happening?
Oh, definitely. I would say 2034, because in the Constitution, it also says he has a right to dissolve the parliament if there's any kind of crisis at the end of his second term, which will be 2029, and that would automatically give him another 5 years. So Yeah, the parliamentary democracy system is finished in Turkey. We have a presidential democratic system now in Turkey, and the problem with it is the Turkish type of presidential system, in that President Erdogan will still be the head of his party, and he will not be partial, obviously.
Well, we'll see how that pans out. Saruhan Hatipoglu, many thanks indeed for joining us here on CGTN.